My uncle showed up at my graduation party and announced, "This house belongs to my son now, not you." The backyard was full of people celebrating my high school graduation when Uncle Dennis walked through the side gate at exactly 6:47 p.m. with my cousin Trevor right behind him. I was talking to my friend Adrian near the grill when I saw them, and something about the way they walked made my stomach tighten. Uncle Dennis wasn't smiling like everyone else. Trevor had this smug expression I'd seen before when he got something he wanted. My grandmother was standing near the patio table talking to neighbors when Uncle Dennis walked straight up to her and took her arm. "Mom, we need to make the announcement now." Grandma's face went pale, and she tried to pull away, but Dennis held her firmly. "Dennis, please, not today. Let David enjoy his party." Dennis ignored her and raised his voice loud enough that conversations around the yard started dying down. "Everyone, I have some important news to share." My grandfather was sitting in his wheelchair near the back door, and I saw him try to stand up. "Dennis, sit down. This isn't the time." But Dennis kept talking like Grandpa hadn't said anything at all. "As of this morning, this property has been legally transferred to my son Trevor." He put his hand on Trevor's shoulder. "The house, the land, everything. It's his now." The entire backyard went silent, except for the music still playing from the speaker near the fence. I stood there holding my plate of food, feeling like someone had punched me in the chest. "What are you talking about?" I asked, but my voice came out weak and confused. Trevor smiled at me, and it wasn't friendly. "Grandma and Grandpa signed everything over to me this morning at the lawyer's office. They decided I deserved it more since I'm actually their grandson by blood. My parents died in a car accident when I was 6 years old, and my grandparents took me in and raised me for the past 11 years. This house was supposed to be mine someday. Grandpa told me that 100 times. Grandma was crying now with tears running down her face. Dennis made us sign. He said if we didn't, he'd put us in a nursing home and we'd never see either of you again." Uncle Dennis laughed and pulled out some papers from his jacket pocket. "That's not what the documents say, Mom. You signed willingly with the lawyer as a witness. Everything is completely legal." He waved the papers around. "You wanted to make sure Trevor was taken care of since he's struggling financially." I looked at my grandparents and saw the truth on their faces. This wasn't something they wanted. They looked terrified. "They coerced you," I said, stepping toward Dennis. "That's elder abuse." Dennis shook his head. "No, David. This is called estate planning. Mom and Dad are 81 and 79 years old. They need someone to manage their affairs, and they chose Trevor." Trevor walked over to the patio table and sat down like he owned the place. "They also signed power of attorney over to me this morning. I make all the medical and financial decisions now." My friend Adrian grabbed my arm before I could move toward Trevor. "Dude, don't. This sounds like legal stuff you need a lawyer for, not a fistfight." But I couldn't stop myself from yelling across the yard. "You can't just take their house. They raised me here. This is my home." Dennis walked closer to me, and his voice got quiet and mean. "Actually, we can. And we did. You're 18 now, David. You're an adult. You don't need guardians anymore." He smiled. "In fact, since Trevor now owns this property, he can decide who lives here. And guess what? He's decided you need to move out." The graduation party around us had completely stopped. My friends, neighbors, teachers, everyone was staring at this nightmare unfolding in the middle of what should have been a celebration. Grandpa's voice came from his wheelchair, shaking with emotion. "You're a monster, Dennis. Your own mother and father, and you do this." Dennis turned to face his parents. "I'm protecting my son's future. You two won't be around forever, and when you die, everything would have gone to David by default, since you made him your legal dependent after his parents died. This way, the family property stays with actual blood relatives." Trevor stood up and stretched, like he'd just woken from a nap. "When do you think you can be out? I'm thinking I want to renovate the whole place. Tear down some walls, update the kitchen." He looked at me with fake sympathy. "You understand, right? It's just business." My grandmother collapsed into a chair, sobbing. "We didn't want this. He threatened us. He said terrible things." Uncle Dennis pulled out his phone. "And if anyone tries to claim coercion, I have a recording from this morning where both of you clearly state your signing of your own free will. The lawyer asked 3 times if you were being forced, and you said no each time." He played a few seconds of audio where I could hear Grandma's voice saying, "We're doing this willingly for our family's future." My grandfather tried to speak. "He told us if we said anything else, he'd—" Dennis cut him off. "You'd what, Dad? Tell everyone I threatened you? With what proof?" He put his phone away. "Face it. You're old, you're confused, and you made a decision this morning that you're now regretting. But legally, it's done." I pulled out my own phone and started recording. "Say that again. Say exactly what you just said about them being old and confused." Dennis noticed what I was doing and smiled wider. "Sure. Your grandparents are elderly and sometimes get confused about things. That's why they wisely decided to transfer property management to someone younger who can handle it." "That's me and Trevor." Adrian whispered to me, "Keep him talking. Get everything on video." Trevor walked over to the grill and grabbed a burger from the plate. "These are pretty good. Did you make these, Grandma?" He took a bite. "This might be the last barbecue we have here for a while. Renovations, you know." One of my teachers, Mr. Alvarez, stepped forward from the crowd. This is inappropriate. You're ruining this young man's graduation party with legal threats. Whatever your family issues are, this is not the time or place. Dennis turned to face him. And you are? Mr. Alvarez stood his ground. I'm David's AP government teacher, and what you're describing sounds like elder financial abuse, which is a felony in this state. Dennis didn't look worried. Everything was done with proper legal representation. I have a lawyer who will confirm every signature was witnessed and voluntary. Do you have a law degree, Mr. Alvarez? Mr. Alvarez looked at me. David, you should call Adult Protective Services. They investigate these situations. Dennis laughed. Go ahead, call them. They'll find the same thing I'm telling you. 2 elderly people made a legal decision to protect their grandson's inheritance. Nothing illegal about that. I turned to my grandparents, who both looked like they'd aged 10 years in the past 10 minutes. Grandpa, tell everyone the truth. What did he threaten you with? Grandpa's hands shook on his wheelchair armrests. He said if we didn't sign, he'd get a judge to declare us mentally incompetent. He said he had a doctor who would testify we had dementia. My grandfather's voice broke. He said we'd end up in a state facility where we'd never see you again, David. He said you'd be put in foster care even though you're 18 because we wouldn't be able to support you financially. Grandma was crying so hard she could barely speak. He said Trevor needed the house because he has a family, that you were young and could start over somewhere else. He made it sound like we were being selfish keeping everything for you. Dennis shrugged. I gave them options and they made a choice. That's how decisions work. He looked around at everyone watching. This party's over. Trevor and I need to do a walkthrough of the property. Trevor handed me his empty plate. Thanks for the burger, cousin. You should probably start packing soon. I'm thinking I want you out by the end of the week. Adrian grabbed the plate before I could throw it. Don't give them any excuse to call the cops on you. My friend Keisha walked over with her phone out. I recorded the whole thing, every word. Several other people held up their phones, too. We all got it. Dennis looked annoyed but not concerned. Record whatever you want. Nothing anyone said here changes the legal documents signed this morning. He gestured to Trevor. Let's go inside and look around. They walked toward the back door, but Grandpa rolled his wheelchair to block them. You're not coming into my house. Dennis leaned down. It's not your house anymore, Dad. It's Trevor's house. And if you try to stop us, that's trespassing. He pulled out his phone again. Should I call the police and have you explain to them why you're trying to block the legal property owner from entering? Grandma grabbed my grandfather's wheelchair. Please, just let them go. Don't make this worse. Trevor pushed past the wheelchair and opened the back door. I could see him walking through the kitchen, opening cabinets and looking around like he was shopping. Dennis followed him inside. The master bedroom is pretty dated. You'll definitely want to gut that. Mr. Alvarez pulled me aside. David, listen to me carefully. Don't do anything rash. Get a lawyer tomorrow morning. This sounds like textbook elder coercion, and there are laws protecting elderly people from this exact situation. He wrote something on a napkin. This is my sister's number. She's a lawyer who specializes in elder abuse cases. Call her first thing Monday. I took the napkin with shaking hands. Monday? That's 3 days away. He said I have to be out by the end of the week. Keisha stepped up. You can stay at my place if you need to. My parents already said it's okay. They're inside right now talking about calling their lawyer friend. More people came over offering help. My neighbor from 2 houses down said his daughter was a paralegal and could look at the documents. Someone else offered to call the state attorney general's office. But Dennis and Trevor were already inside my house, walking through rooms, planning renovations, acting like they owned the place because apparently they did. The party cleared out fast after that. People tried to say congratulations on graduating, but it all felt hollow and fake. What was I supposed to celebrate when I'd just lost my home? By 8 p.m., only Adrian, Keisha, and Mr. Alvarez remained in the backyard, helping me clean up plates and decorations that suddenly felt like relics from another life. Dennis and Trevor finally came back outside. Trevor took photos of every room. I'll need before pictures for the renovation blog I'm starting. This is going to be a great project. Dennis handed my grandfather a business card. This is the lawyer who handled everything this morning. If you have questions about the paperwork, call him. He'll explain everything again. He looked at me. David, I know this seems harsh right now, but in a few years you'll understand we did this to preserve the family legacy. Trevor's my son. Blood matters. I couldn't stop myself. I've lived here since I was 6 years old. I am family. Dennis shook his head. You were a charity case my parents took in after your parents died. We all felt bad for you, but that doesn't make you entitled to their property. The words hit me like a physical blow. 11 years of being told I was loved, that I belonged, that this was my home, and it all came down to being called a charity case. Grandpa tried to wheel toward Dennis. Get out of here before I call the police myself. Dennis smiled. And tell them what? That your son and grandson visited you? That Trevor inspected the property he legally owns? He gestured to Trevor. Let's go. We have a lot of planning to do. They left through the side gate the same way they came in. I watched them get into Dennis's Mercedes and drive away. The backyard was a mess of half-eaten food, crumpled napkins, and deflated balloons. My graduation party had turned into a wake. Grandma was still crying, and Grandpa sat in his wheelchair looking like he'd aged 20 years. Adrian helped me carry the folding tables inside. This is insane, man. There has to be something you can do. But I didn't know what that something was. I'd just graduated high school. I had $800 in my savings account from my part-time job at the hardware store. I didn't know anything about property law or elder abuse or fighting my uncle, who apparently had planned this for who knows how long. Keisha was on her phone researching lawyers. There's a legal aid office that helps with elder abuse cases. They open at 9 now on Monday. Monday felt like a lifetime away. Mr. Alvarez stayed until almost 10 p.m., helping me research options on his laptop. The key is proving coercion. If your grandparents were threatened or manipulated into signing, those documents might be voidable. He pulled up case law on his screen. But you need evidence, recordings, witnesses, proof of threats. I thought about the recording Dennis played of my grandparents saying they signed willingly. How could I prove coercion when he had audio of them denying it? After everyone left, I sat with my grandparents in the living room. Grandpa had stopped crying, but his hand still shook. David, I'm so sorry. I thought I could protect you. I thought if I just signed, we'd have time to figure something out. I pulled up a chair next to his wheelchair. Tell me exactly what happened this morning. Everything. Grandma wiped her eyes and started talking. Dennis called at 7 a.m. and said he was taking us to breakfast. When we got in his car, Trevor was already in the back seat. They drove us to some lawyer's office in the city, not our regular lawyer. She took a shaky breath. The lawyer had all these papers ready. Dennis said it was just routine estate planning to make sure everything was organized. Grandpa continued the story. Then the lawyer started reading from the documents. Transfer of property deed, power of attorney, medical directives. I tried to stop it and ask questions, but Dennis kept saying we needed to trust him, that this was for our own protection. Grandma's voice got quieter. When I hesitated, Dennis pulled me into the hallway. He showed me letters from a doctor I've never met saying I was showing signs of dementia. He said if I didn't sign, he'd use those letters to have me declared incompetent. I felt sick. What doctor? You don't have dementia. Grandma shook her head. I've never seen this doctor. Dennis said his friend at the clinic wrote the evaluation based on his observations of me at family dinners. She pulled a tissue from her pocket. He said once I was declared incompetent, Trevor would be appointed our guardian anyway, and you'd be removed from the house immediately. Grandpa added, he told us that at 18, you're legally an adult, and we couldn't keep you here without property ownership. He said signing now was the only way to give us time to figure out arrangements for you. The manipulation was sophisticated and cruel. Dennis had researched exactly what threats would work on two elderly people who were terrified of losing their grandson. Did you tell the lawyer any of this? I asked. Grandpa shook his head. The lawyer worked for Dennis. He kept asking if we understood what we were signing and if anyone was forcing us. Dennis was standing right there. What were we supposed to say? The coercion was clear to me, but proving it legally was different. Dennis had been careful. He'd created a paper trail that made everything look legitimate. I pulled out my phone and called the number Mr. Alvarez gave me, even though it was late. It went to voicemail. Hi, this is David Chen. I stopped. I'd used a forbidden name without thinking. I started over. This is David Brennan. My teacher gave me your number. My uncle forced my grandparents to sign over their house to my cousin, and I need help. Please call me back as soon as possible. I gave my number and hung up. Grandma looked exhausted. You should get some sleep, David. Tomorrow we'll figure out what to do. But I couldn't sleep. I spent the night at my desk researching elder abuse laws, property transfers, and coercion defenses. Every article I found said the same thing. You need evidence, you need proof, you need witnesses willing to testify. At 2 a.m., I heard a car pull into the driveway. I looked out my window and saw Dennis's Mercedes again. My heart started racing. What was he doing here in the middle of the night? I crept downstairs and watched through the window as Dennis and Trevor got out of the car. They weren't coming to the door. Instead, they walked around to the side of the house where the utility meters were. I grabbed my phone and started recording video from the dark living room. Dennis pulled out a flashlight and examined the gas meter. Trevor took photos with his phone. They were documenting the property like they were preparing for something. I opened the front door quietly and stepped onto the porch. What are you doing here? Dennis spun around, surprised to see me. Jesus, David, you scared me. He recovered quickly. We're just checking the utilities. Trevor needs to know what he's working with for the renovation. It was 2 a.m. You couldn't do this during the day like normal people? Trevor walked over. The house is mine now. I can inspect it whenever I want. He looked up at the roof. How old is that roof? Looks like it needs replacing. Dennis put his hand on Trevor's shoulder. We should go. We'll come back tomorrow during reasonable hours. They got back in the car, but not before I got clear video of them on the property at 2 in the morning acting like they owned the place. Because legally, maybe they did. I sent the video to myself and backed it up to cloud storage. Then I sent it to Adrian, Keisha, and Mr. Alvarez with a message explaining what happened. Adrian replied immediately, even though it was the middle of the night. Dude, That's breaking and entering. They were on your property without permission. But was it my property anymore? That was the question that kept me awake the rest of the night. Monday morning finally came, and I called the legal aid office at exactly 9 WOW. The receptionist took my information and said someone would call me back within 24 hours. 24 hours felt like forever. At 10 WOW, Mr. Alvarez's sister called me directly. Her name was Rita Alvarez, and she'd apparently heard about my situation from her brother. David, I'm going to need copies of every document your grandparents signed. Can you get those from them? I asked my grandparents, but they didn't have copies. Dennis had taken everything. Rita made a disapproving sound. Of course he did. Okay, we can request copies from the lawyer who witnessed the signatures. That's public record if the deed transfer was filed. She explained the process. First, we file a petition to block the transfer based on elder coercion. Then we request a full investigation. But I need to be honest with you, David. These cases are hard to win. If the paperwork looks legitimate, judges are reluctant to overturn legal documents. My stomach sank. So Trevor just gets to keep the house? Rita's voice was firm. I didn't say that. I said it's hard, not impossible. Your grandparents need to be willing to testify that they were coerced, and you need to gather any evidence you can find of Dennis's threats or manipulation. I thought about the recording Dennis played where my grandparents said they signed willingly. He has audio of them denying coercion. He made them say it. Rita paused. That's actually helpful for us. It shows he anticipated accusations and covered his tracks. That's consciousness of guilt. People don't usually record themselves unless they're worried about being accused of something. By Monday afternoon, Rita had filed an emergency petition to freeze the property transfer pending investigation. The court scheduled a hearing for Friday, 4 days to build a case against my uncle who'd clearly been planning this for months or maybe years. I started going through every family dinner, every conversation, every interaction I could remember between Dennis and my grandparents. There had been signs I'd missed. 6 months ago at Thanksgiving, Dennis asked Grandpa about his will. Grandpa said everything was going to me since I was his dependent. Dennis got quiet after that and left early. At Christmas, Dennis brought a lawyer to dinner. He introduced him as a friend, but now I realized he was scouting, finding someone who would help him do this. In February, Trevor started visiting more often. He'd walk through the house commenting on repairs that needed to be done, asking how old the appliances were, mentioning how valuable the property was because of its location. They'd been planning this, laying groundwork. I wrote everything down in a document and sent it to Rita. She called me back within an hour. This is good, David. It establishes a pattern of Dennis scoping out the property and discussing inheritance. But we need more. What more could there be? I'd given her everything I had. What about the fake dementia diagnosis? I asked. Can't we prove that's fraudulent? Rita sighed. We'd have to subpoena medical records and possibly depose the doctor. That takes time. We have 4 days. She paused. Unless your grandparents have recent medical records from their actual doctor showing they're mentally competent. I asked Grandma, and she said they'd both had checkups last month. Their regular doctor, Dr. Patel, had done cognitive assessments on both of them. Everything came back normal. No signs of dementia or incompetence. Get me those records, Rita said immediately. That directly contradicts Dennis's fake diagnosis. I called Dr. Patel's office and explained the situation. The receptionist said she'd need signed releases from my grandparents before she could share medical records. I drove Grandma and Grandpa to the clinic, got the releases signed, and waited while they printed copies of everything. Dr. Patel came out personally to talk to us. I heard what happened from your grandfather. This is disgusting. She was a small woman in her 40s with fierce eyes. I've been their doctor for 15 years. Neither of them has dementia. I'll testify to that in court if needed. Rita now had medical evidence contradicting Dennis's coercion tactic. But we needed more. We needed proof of the threats themselves. Tuesday evening, Trevor showed up at the house again. This time he had a contractor with him. They walked around the property taking measurements and making notes. I confronted them at the front door. You can't just bring people here without permission. Trevor smiled. I don't need permission. I own this house. He gestured to the contractor. This is Bill. He's going to handle the renovation. We're starting next week. The contractor looked uncomfortable. Are the current occupants moving out? I usually don't start work with people still living in the property. Trevor waved his hand dismissively. They'll be gone by then. Don't worry about it. I pulled out my phone and started recording. There's a legal challenge to the property transfer. You might want to check with your lawyer before you start planning renovations. Bill looked between me and Trevor. Is there a title dispute? Trevor's confidence faltered. No. There's no dispute. The property is legally mine. My cousin here is just upset about the situation. Bill packed up his measuring tape. I don't work on properties with active ownership disputes. Call me when it's resolved. He left quickly, and Trevor glared at me. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I stepped closer to him. You stole my grandparents' house through elder abuse. I'm going to fight this with everything I have. Trevor's face changed. The friendly cousin mask dropped, and I saw real anger underneath. You were never supposed to be here this long anyway. You were a temporary thing after your parents died. Everyone expected your grandparents to get tired of raising someone else's kid and send you to foster care. The words were designed to hurt, and they did. But they also revealed something important. Say that again. Say exactly how you think I was temporary. I kept recording. Trevor was angry enough that he didn't care. My dad told me years ago that once you turned 18, you'd be gone. Your grandparents would remember who their real family is. Blood family, not some random orphan they took pity on. He pointed at the house. This property has been in our family for 3 generations. It should go to actual family members, not charity cases who happen to be in the right place at the right time. I kept him talking. And your dad planned to take it from them? Trevor shrugged. He protected what's ours. Your grandparents are old and soft. They would have given everything to you out of misplaced guilt about your dead parents. Someone had to stop that from happening. He was admitting everything on camera. The planning, the manipulation, the premeditation. So the elder abuse was intentional? Trevor's eyes narrowed. It wasn't abuse. It was estate planning. Just because you don't like the results doesn't make it illegal. But his tone and words contradicted that claim. He'd just described a years-long scheme to dispossess elderly people of their property. I sent the video to Rita immediately. She called me back within minutes. David, this is exactly what we needed. He just confessed to conspiracy and premeditation. This shows the property transfer wasn't a legitimate estate planning decision. Wednesday morning, Dennis called my phone. I didn't answer, but he left a voicemail. David, we need to talk about your move-out date. Trevor wants to start renovations on Monday. That means you and your grandparents need to be out by Sunday night. He paused. I've found a nice assisted living facility for Mom and Dad. It's very affordable, and you're 18 now, so you can find your own place. He was trying to scatter us, split up the family so we couldn't coordinate or testify together. I played the voicemail for Rita. He's rushing this because he knows we filed the petition. He wants physical possession before Friday's hearing. Rita's voice was grim. Don't move anything. Stay in that house. If you leave, it gets harder to argue you have standing to challenge the transfer. Thursday afternoon, the sheriff showed up at the door with papers. My heart dropped. This was it. We were being evicted. But the deputy handed the papers to me and said, "This is notice of the Friday hearing and a temporary restraining order preventing any occupancy changes until the court makes a ruling." Dennis and Trevor couldn't force us out before the hearing. Rita had convinced the judge that moving us would cause irreparable harm to the case. I called Rita immediately. "The restraining order is in place. You're safe until Friday." She paused. "David, I need you to prepare yourself. This hearing might not go the way we want. Judges generally respect legal documents, especially when they're properly executed with witnesses." My chest tightened. "But we have evidence of coercion. Trevor's confession. The fake dementia diagnosis." Rita's voice was gentle but realistic. "We have good evidence. But Dennis has a signed deed transfer, witnessed signatures, and your grandparents' recorded statements denying coercion. It's going to come down to which evidence the judge finds more credible." I couldn't lose this house. It was the only home I'd known since my parents died. It was where I learned to ride a bike, where I studied for every test, where I'd opened my college acceptance letters. Trevor wanted to gut it and turn it into a renovation project. Friday morning arrived with heavy clouds that matched my mood. Rita met us at the courthouse at 8:30. "Remember, let me do the talking. If the judge asks you direct questions, answer honestly and concisely." Dennis showed up with his lawyer, a man in an expensive suit who carried a leather briefcase. Trevor stood next to them wearing a dress shirt and tie, trying to look responsible and legitimate. The hearing started at 9 in a small courtroom with wood paneling and fluorescent lights. Judge Catherine Park presided, a woman in her 60s who looked like she'd seen every family dispute imaginable and was tired of all of them. Rita presented our case first. She explained the coercion timeline, showed Dr. Patel's medical records proving my grandparents were mentally competent, and played Trevor's recorded confession about the years-long scheme. Dennis's lawyer objected throughout. Hearsay. Speculation. Irrelevant. But Judge Park let most of it in. When Rita finished, the judge turned to Dennis's lawyer. "Your response?" The lawyer stood up and spread documents across the table. "Your Honor, my clients followed proper legal procedures. The property transfer was witnessed by a licensed attorney. Both parties stated clearly they were signing voluntarily. The grandson's allegations of coercion are uncorroborated and contradicted by the evidence." He played Dennis's recording of my grandparents denying coercion. "The petitioners claim threats were made, but they denied any threats when asked directly by a neutral third party." Judge Park listened carefully. Then she asked to question my grandparents directly. Grandma took the witness stand first. Her hands shook as she was sworn in. Rita asked her to describe what happened the morning they signed the documents. Grandma's voice was barely above a whisper. "Dennis told us David would be taken away if we didn't sign. He said we'd be declared incompetent and put in a state facility where we'd never see anyone again." Dennis's lawyer stood up. "Mrs. Brennan, when the attorney asked if anyone was forcing you to sign, what did you say?" Grandma looked down at her hands. "I said no. Dennis was standing right there. I was scared." The lawyer pressed. But you lied to a legal professional about being coerced? Grandma started crying. He said if I told the truth, everything would be worse, that we'd lose David immediately and be separated from each other. Judge Park's expression didn't change, but I saw her take notes. Grandpa testified next, and his story matched Grandma's. He described the fake dementia diagnosis, the threats about state facilities, the fear of losing me. Dennis's lawyer hammered him the same way. You told the attorney you were signing voluntarily. Were you lying then, or are you lying now? Grandpa's voice was firm despite his age. I was protecting my grandson. Dennis created a situation where telling the truth felt more dangerous than going along with his plan. The judge called a 15-minute recess. Rita pulled me aside in the hallway. It could go either way. The judge clearly sees the coercion, but Dennis covered his tracks legally. When we returned, Judge Park had made her decision. I've reviewed all evidence and testimony. This case involves elderly individuals who signed legal documents under circumstances that suggest coercion, but who also explicitly denied that coercion when questioned by a neutral party. She looked at my grandparents. I believe you were scared and manipulated. However, the law requires clear evidence to overturn properly executed legal documents. My heart sank. We were going to lose. Judge Park continued. That said, the grandson's recorded statements establish a pattern of predatory behavior inconsistent with legitimate estate planning. The fake medical diagnosis is particularly troubling. She looked at Dennis. Mr. Brennan, your actions constitute elder financial abuse under state law. I'm voiding the property transfer effective immediately. Relief flooded through me so fast I almost fell over. Trevor jumped up. You can't do that. We followed all the legal procedures. Judge Park's voice was ice. Sit down, Mr. Brennan. Proper procedures don't validate fraudulent intent. She turned to Dennis. I'm also referring this case to the district attorney for criminal investigation. Elder financial abuse carries up to 5 years in prison. Dennis went pale. His lawyer tried to interject, but Judge Park shut him down. Save it for the criminal proceedings, counselor. She signed orders restoring full ownership to my grandparents and revoking all powers of attorney Dennis had obtained. The property returns to Mr. and Mrs. Brennan Sr. immediately. All renovation plans are canceled. The petitioners are awarded legal fees. She looked at me. Young man, you fought hard for your family. That took courage. Then she addressed Dennis and Trevor one more time. If either of you contact the Brennan family outside of official legal channels, I'll hold you in contempt. Do you understand? They both nodded, looking defeated. The hearing ended, and Rita hugged me in the hallway. You did it. Your family gets to keep their home. But it was more than that. We'd proven that blood doesn't matter more than love. That being chosen is just as valid as being born into a family. Those 11 years of raising a child means more than genetics and entitlement. Dennis and Trevor left through a side exit, and I never saw either of them at another family gathering again. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.